Well, greetings. Thanks for joining us today on our weekly financial roundtable, week number 20. Remember, money's not the most important thing in life, but it is like oxygen on the gotta have it scale. So I'm Tom Qnity from Qnity. We have a program called Money by Qnity, which is financial success training. And it is really designed to help students not only earn great money, but do what they love and have a great quality of life in this industry that we all love so much. It's about how to go from something complicated, overwhelming, and confusing to a more clear and better path towards financial success. Using a simple, visual, and actionable approach. And we want to thank you. We know your time is precious, so thanks for spending your time with us. To prosper, you manage your ATM, your attention, time, and money. And it's not lost on us that this is precious time. So thanks for joining us today. We hope you have some light bulb moments and some dots connect for you. Last week's guest, I loved having time with Tam. He had a great segment on not only the nail community and the evolution of nails, and nail artists, as well as quite a few insights on family business. Today, we get to spend time with Janet Williams. She is going to spend some time sharing some of her thoughts about inclusion and money and a few other topics. Past recordings of these roundtables are on YouTube. That's the best place to find them. Keep in mind that we also have another roundtable that we do each week at 10 a.m. Central Time. In certain cases, the content overlaps. In other situations, it's different content. What we'll go through today will very closely mirror what we went through this morning. A shout out to our sponsors and friends at Pivot Point, who we are thrilled to announce our launch of the Money by Qnity program with. We love our partnership with Pivot Point, and that they embrace a curriculum that not only teaches core money skills, but also money mindset, money success, and so many life skills that are so important for people to enter the professional beauty industry with the right type of information so that they can have the kind of career that matches their love for their craft. We'll hope you become a money school. You can go to qnityforschools.com. You can book a demo. Also, Lightheart Sanders sponsors these sessions. They are CPAs very focused on the beauty industry and necessary audits and other advisory and other type services. Thanks to Jared Sanders and the Lightheart Sanders team. You should have gotten a NIGRID with your invite. This is one of our core visual thinking tools. Use it as a mind map to come up with your own light bulb moments. And with that, I'd like to welcome Janet to the mic and the camera. And Janet, it's great to have you spend time with us today.
Thank you. Great to be here, Tom. I really appreciate it.
We're double dipping. We got to spend time with you this morning and got your insights. And I was taking notes and I was listening with my head and my heart. So thank you for spending time with us today.
My pleasure. Absolutely.
So you and I met about 5 years ago. You were working in the world of Dessange, and we got to know each other a little bit back then. And I had some very fond memories of our interactions, doing some work together professionally. I know that you have a background prior to that was in the school. You worked in a school company in DC. You'll talk about that more a little bit, I'm sure. And then there's about a 5-year gap between when you and I connected, and we recently connected because of our joint involvement on Unite as One, which is a collective think tank representing several major associations in the professional beauty industry that's banding together to address critical issues, opportunities, et cetera, with one voice. And you are a big part of one of the 4 subcommittees. You are on the Cultural Intelligence Committee, which is a vitally important part of this whole project. So thank you for being a volunteer on that. Thank you for the work that you're doing today. And thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
So we had some prep time together, and we've decided on a topic of inclusion and money, and an area where you certainly have some expertise and some insights. And the word inclusion in and of itself requires a little bit of unpacking, you know?
Mhm, mhm.
So inclusion and money, what does that mean to you? It's a big, broad question.
It is, and it's a big topic, but I'll drill it down to make it super relatable and simple for everyone. I think that there are some misconceptions about what we mean when we're talking about inclusion. Sometimes people think that inclusion is just about, being nice to everyone who's around us. Um, and that's great. And we should be nice to everyone who's around us, but it's a little bit deeper than that, especially within any type of business or school context. And so it really is about access. Inclusion is about access for everyone to the same opportunities, challenges, level of respect, and value. And if we were going to drill it down to two things, I would say that it's about respecting and valuing people despite whatever differences they're bringing to the table. Inclusion in and of itself is really an important element to embrace and to take into consideration and to practice, because all of this really should be a verb. It's not just a theory. It's about what we're doing and how we're showing up in the world, how we're behaving every day. But what makes inclusion even more powerful is its combination with some other important elements. So my business today is a small boutique consulting firm called Progressive Discoveries. And what we focus on is diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And it's the combination of those four elements that really give us the kind of traction to get better results, better interaction, better collaboration between people.
Said diversity, equity, belonging, and
inclusion.
inclusion. Yeah. And those are some big words.
Yeah.
And now let's combine them with the world of money. All right. This is a money roundtable. And, one of the things I learned from you and do understand is that from my own experience is that there's often could be a big gap between a leader in an organization, whether it's a school or it's a salon or spa, and then the student or new professional. What are some of the gaps that are out there and some blind sides that we might have as leaders?
Well, I'll tell you, because I spent a number of years as a director of a very large beauty school in Washington, D.C., and we had just an amazing variety and diversity of students that attended that particular institute. One of the things that became very obvious to me is that how I looked at money as a business person with the goals that I had for running that institute relative to what the students considered to be important, there was a wide chasm there, a huge gap, if you will. And the important learnings that I had through that experience, and then also consequently in working with a salon company that was a parent company of a very large chain of salons, over 1,000 locations throughout the US and Canada. What I learned is that the people's relationship with money and their feelings towards money, they vary across identity differences. And those identity differences could be ethnic, racial, cultural, socioeconomic, which is a big one, experiential, based on the amount of just even life lived experience that you have is going to drive, how you are perceiving money. And then the other, I think, most important factor in all of this, more so than any of the other ones that I mentioned, is age. Age ties so powerfully into how we are looking at, considering regarding respecting or not respecting the power and the influence of money in our lives. So what I recognize is that all of these factors, all these identity factors that people bring to the table form what we call an interactive influence model. And they all contribute to how students specific, and I'll focus a lot on students in this conversation because we're talking to a school group and I have certainly a lot of background here. But all of these features contribute to how students and beauty professionals show up in regard to money. So as an example, I found myself having a lot of conversations, and these conversations initially were not intentional conversations, but they happened as a result of some of the ways that I saw these students behaving. And it made me think, wow, we are certainly not on the same page in regard to how we are looking at money. So a big conversation is about the perceived value around things like the cost of services and what they mean to various students. So for example, a student who, might have had the life experience of, never spending more than $5 on a bottle of shampoo, or never having a haircut that cost $100, or any of those types of experiences, the lens through which that individual might look at what we're asking them to do or what our services might end up costing, there's a huge gap there because they might be thinking, well, what this is supposed to cost is, or what I'm used to this costing is X. And so I have to be careful about what I'm going to ask of my guests. And sometimes that's working against what the salon or even what the school would like that student to recognize or to do. So the understanding that gap that people might have is an important understanding to have, because it's going to influence how that student shows up when it comes to asking them to upsell, asking them to offer additional services, asking them especially to sell products. And that's probably the area where I ran into the most roadblocks is, how do we get these students to sell products? Well, it's very hard if the first thing that they're thinking about is that I can't wrap my mind around asking someone to pay $30 for a shampoo. And if that block is there, they're never going to sell the product. So getting past that becomes the real work.
Yeah, gotcha. You use some big words there, interactive influence model. Is that a proprietary model, or are you referencing something that's a body of work elsewhere?
It's commonly used under various circumstances, right? So in other aspects of my life, and I did a lot of work with leadership training and just leadership theory, interactive influence model was something that showed up in a lot of different places in terms of, and the point of looking at things from that perspective is that nothing really exists in a vacuum. That's the shortest way of explaining that everything that we're doing influences something else and interacts with something else. So in the way that I just used that term, I was talking about how all of these identity markers have an influence and interact with each other. So there's not one particular factor that points to why a student, for example, thinks the way that they do about money. You can't point it to just one thing. There are lots of influences that would determine why a certain person feels however they feel about money. And this is why it's important to take on this inclusive mindset around this, right? Because if we're saying, okay, we need to be inclusive as it pertains to what's going on with students and how they regard money, then that opens our listening to recognize that not everybody is coming from the same experience, that everyone is bringing their own lived experience, their own values, their own upbringing, all of those things to the table, and they probably are different than each other. So there's not any one way to look at this. There's going to be multiple ways that we would need to look at it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, interesting. You talked about the identity factor issues. You know,
Mhm.
you broke it down between socioeconomic experience, race, sex, age, but you're calling out age as the one that is the most direct and noticeable, and the most that the vast majority of us would all experience. Is that right?
Yes. And here's the other thing about age is this, especially as it pertains to a beauty school environment, the vast majority of the students tend to be younger. You know, they are many of the majority of the students that with whom we interacted were in their 20s, you know,
Yeah.
and early to mid 20s. And then there was that next age group up. And when we were really lucky, we had some students that were significantly more mature because they're coming to the table with a much more mature and realistic attitude about the importance of money in their lives, right? They're making that direct correlation to having to pay their mortgage or pay their rent and taking care of all of the things that they need to take care of for their family. They're making a direct correlation between that and their experience at beauty school, and how that experience at beauty school is critical to what's going to happen to them from a financial standpoint in the future. Whereas when you're dealing sometimes with a younger student, they're not making that direct correlation. You know, the motivation that they have for attending a beauty school even oftentimes is significantly different than the motivation of someone who is much older and who's coming to beauty school with, you know, as their second or even sometimes third career. So that younger student, a lot of the times, the reason why they're coming to beauty school is because they're a creative person and they want that outlet for that creativity. And they're not necessarily thinking about the business side of what this experience is about. And they're also oftentimes not thinking about the routine and sometimes even mundane nature of what we end up having to do um, as beauty professionals, right? They're not necessarily thinking about that piece. They're just thinking about the fantasy part of being a part of the industry. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to support yourself. And sometimes you support a family as well. Oftentimes you do.
You know, I asked you this question earlier today, and I've struggled with something. I struggle with two data points. And I love the concept of filling the gaps. You know, we got a gap here. On one hand, there's a tremendous amount of evidence to say that money is not the number one motivator when someone gets into the workforce. We have done multiple studies in the professional market, trying to determine a ranking, what's most important, earning great money, or what's most important to you right now, earning more money, doing more what you love, or having a life. And usually money comes out as last, as the priority. And then there's other data points that also would suggest that, you know, money isn't the driving force. However, we know that there's a lot of migration out of a job or out of the industry because of money, you know. And I'm really looking for some wisdom around that. Do you have some wisdom around that? And do you agree that that's a gap?
I do agree that that's a gap. I do, because again, there are lots of places where there is a responsibility there for us as leaders in the industry, whether we are running a school, we're school directors, we're school owners, we're school educators, any of those things. So whether we're on that side of the equation, or if we're on the other side where we're providing jobs for people. But I do think that there is a bit of an obligation that we have to provide a grounding for new professionals. And that grounding includes having them understand the financial sides of this and have them tie their personal lives and what they need to survive in their personal lives to what they're doing every day with us, right? There has to be a really powerful tie there. So after we got off the last call, I thought about this very particular, very specific example that I have that pertains to this. And I'm sorry I didn't mention it on the last one. But I was an executive with a salon company, and we, represented a number of salons, over 1,000, I think I mentioned that. And one of the salon owners that we worked with, I really loved this salon owner. And the reason why I did was because, first of all, she had one of the best and most successful salons in the system, but not just in our system. Relative to any salon in this country, I think that hers would have been one of the top salons. And this was the reason why. Because she understood, and she was single-mindedly focused on making sure that her stylist understood that, first and foremost, this is a business, and that as a beauty professional, whether you are a stylist or you are a nail tech or you're an esthetician, whatever it is, whatever aspect of this business that you're in, you are first and foremost running your own personal business. You're working for a salon, but you're really ultimately working for yourself in that. And then the salon and the individuals within it have to benefit from that. And the number one way that we're going to measure that is through what we're able to generate in terms of revenue and what people are able to take home in terms of income. And so the ways in which she really brought that point home was that the minute she had, first of all, she had a very vigorous interview process. She wasn't that owner who said, okay, well, if this person has a license, oh, and by the way, happens to be breathing, they can work here. The criteria was a little bit more strenuous than that. She really vetted them, and she really had them understand what her salon was about and what was important. But even more importantly than that was that her onboarding process was very specific. And as she brought someone new on, part of the deal on that first day was that every new employee had to spend an hour with her as the owner on their first day. And during that hour, one of the most important questions that she asked them was, what do you want? In other words, what are some of your most important financial goals? And she was very specific about that. And then she also asked them, what is something that's outside of your everyday living expenses that you want and that you felt in the past is difficult for you to get?
Great
Tell
question.
me what that. Yeah, isn't that great? She said, tell me what that thing is. And so they would say, well, I want to be able to buy, there was at the time, there was this really stylish bike for kids, and I have no idea what those are, but this person says, I want to buy this particular bike for my kid. That bike costs $1,000. And someone would say they wanted to do this or do that. Okay. And so then she would have them, okay, let's work this out. What is it going to take? And what will you have to make above and beyond your day-to-day expenses to reach that goal? And so she did that individual exercise with each person. And by the way, what was really spectacular and interesting about her and her salon is that it was rare that she'd have to go through this exercise in this way, because she had almost no turnover, because all her stylists made so much money. No one left, and the only reason why they left was because some family thing happened. They had to move, or something else big that went on. It wasn't because the stylists were feeling as if they couldn't make any money there. They had ample opportunity. So above and beyond that, though, there are lots of things that we can all do, whether we're on the school side or on the salon side, to make sure that we are filling these gaps. And there are 4 things that I want to quickly just mention that can help. And these are very specific how-tos. One is talk about it. The next one is demonstrate it. The next one is lead around it. And the next one is practice it. So when it comes to that first one, talking about it, not just saying to your students, okay, well, you have a guest count goal of X, and you have a product sales goal of Y, and you have a services goal of X number of haircuts and X number of color applications and X number of highlights. You're going to have that conversation. And of course, those goals should be set. But before that, that talk about it piece is around trying to get a sense of what everyone's relationship or experience with money really looks like. Because without having that foundational knowledge, you're going to run into problems, right? Because again, if you are interacting, you're saying to someone, hey, I need you to sell, 10 bottles of $40 shampoo this per week. And this is a person who's never spent more than $3 on a bottle of shampoo. There's probably going to be a gap there because that individual is looking at that mandate through their own personal lens saying, how on earth can I ever do this when I don't even, that's not relatable to me, that you're charging $40 for a bottle of shampoo. That's just an example. So having that conversation and trying to meet people where they are to help them to get to where you need them to be is an important piece. And by the way, that's equity. That's what equity looks like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to understand where people are, meeting them there to help them to get where you need them to go. So I could spend a lot of time talking about that, but I'll be brief and say that the next one, demonstrated, is about modeling the behaviors that you really want to see and making sure that there are standards that are set, whether it's your beauty school or your salon. I can't tell you how many times I've heard owners or even beauty school operators talk about this nirvana, this fantastical idea of what they'd like to see within their school or within their salon, but then they're not demonstrating that. That's not really what's going on there. So there has to be congruence between what it is that you say that you want to have happen and what's actually happening. And taking a step back sometimes and looking at what's really going on here. Are people really demonstrating the behaviors that we want to see? Are they, seeing the number of guests that we're asking them to see? Are they having the proper consultation that we have trained them to have? Or are they just kind of skipping all of those steps and then they have poor results and we're like, why is that happening? Well, a lot of the time it's not happening because we're not holding people accountable to getting those results that we're asking them to get. And that's a tough piece because it's not just about, putting down the hammer. It's really about creating a culture and creating an environment that makes it conducive to get the results you're looking for. In other words, you're creating this environment where people want to deliver to you what you're asking of them. And that part is tough. And what that requires is a very solid commitment to making that happen and consistent conversation and work around that. And it's consistent. But once you're doing it, you start to see the fruit. The fruit is born from doing that, but the work has to be put in. So that was the second one, is demonstrating, and leading around it is the same sort of thing. But leading around it is about providing those visual and verbal reminders to people of what's expected of them. And that can happen in a lot of different ways. That can happen through huddles, through team meetings, through one-on-ones, but then also through incentivizing them in various ways, through having one-on-one meetings with people as you need to. If you're running a school, your education team has to be able to have the same conversation with the students that you're having. And that was one of the first things that I worked on when I started running a school. And by the way, in the system where I worked, the school that I ran was the #1 school in the system. And it was the #1 school in the system because I was single-mindedly focused on making sure that these students could perform at the top of the industry and that they would be positioned for really strong jobs when they finished, and that our school had a reputation of producing great students. It's to me, it was all linear. It was all one line of the same type of things. Like, these are the activities that we have to engage in to make sure that these students cross the finish line in a way that's going to make them successful at the onset. And that doesn't mean that they're going to be six-figure stylists when they graduate from school, but that they are able to transition into work environments that are successful for them, that will lead them to the point where they can be that six-figure stylist later on. So there was a lot of leading around getting to that result, and that's an important piece. And then that fourth one around practicing it, it's also about what are we reinforcing in what people are doing every day, right? Are we making sure that people are using their downtime wisely? And that was a huge pet peeve for me. If the student, if we were talking about students who are not in classrooms so much anymore, but who are now on the clinic floor and seeing guests, when they are not with a guest, what are they doing? Here's what they shouldn't be doing, and what I would not allow them to be doing was goofing off, taking smoke breaks, eating, engaging in what I like to call unproductive behaviors, and you can fill in the blank about what those would be. But instead, we should be talking about products, working on our product knowledge. We could be role playing with each other. Even in some instances, if it looked like let's do each other's hair on some new technique that they could learn, but just all types of activities that would help them to be better at their craft, to help them gain more confidence, to help them feel more secure in reaching their goals. And those goals, again, are tied into their financial outcomes.
I've got some questions for you. Thank you for that. And I got to talk about it, demonstrate it, lead it, and practice it.
Yeah.
Let's go right back to talk about it. Give me a so let's just say that I want to learn about someone's experience with money. How do I, give me the question. What is it? Do I literally say, what has been your experience with money? I would imagine if I asked that question, they would so help me scripted questions.
Okay. So related specifically to this and to the beauty industry, I would ask practical questions around what are you currently doing and what have you done in the past? In other words, what types of shampoos do you use? What brands do you buy?
Okay.
When you get your hair done, how much money do you pay for that? What do you define as a valuable service? What is the most amount of money you would pay to get your hair done, and what would that entail? What does that look like for you? So just getting because that's a pulse check, right? And that pulse check is going to give you a sense of where this person lies on this very vast spectrum of what people consider to be valuable in this industry, and get a sense of where they are so that you can help them get to where you need them to go. Because if you are, and it could be that your school or your salon is more of a value-driven salon where, the average ticket is $25, then that's great if that person is living in that space, and you can kind of, get a sense of what they would need to even approve be above and beyond that. But if they're living in that space and you are in a place where you're expecting them to be able to generate $75 to $200 per ticket, and their mindset is in that $15 to $25 range, then there's going to be a gap there. So just figuring out what they're familiar with and what they understand and what they know and where their comfort level is going to help you take them to the next level. So that's what I mean by talk about it.
So to build on that, these are questions that center around specifically a salon experience in terms of how much they paid for service or product. Mm-hmm. One of the things coming from a premium priced salon spa company, we would expand on that to look at other aspects of someone's life. For example, the experience at a really nice restaurant, what it's like to go to a 5-star hotel. Mm-hmm. And with our managers, we would do field trips. I'm not saying that we sent people to 5-star hotels and put them up for a week, but to actually experience what that's like and to experience it from a really being taken care of standpoint. Is that building on what you're saying here too?
Absolutely. So that was our practice for every graduating class.
Yep.
We rented a bus and we put them all on the bus and we took them to they would spend the entire, it would take all day, but they did salon visits. And they would go to, and all of, because our brand was a high-end brand, so all of the salons that they visited were relatively high-end, but they all had different types of, a different type of culture, a different type of vibe. And some of them would be, these super, super high-ends where everyone is all in white, and even the shampoo room is completely in white, and everything is so pristine and that kind of thing. And then some would be more, the aroma is wonderful, and everyone is kind of relaxed, and it's all very zen and all of that. So there, all of these different characteristics and personalities of these salons exist. And so because of that, we put them on the bus and we would take them to visit salons while they were operating. And it was fascinating to see what would happen as a result of that. That was part of the tuition that they paid, and it was part of their education, and it was non-negotiable. That happened with every single class that finished. But what came out of that was always amazing, because they would then say, okay, I have a different perspective of what I want, because they have one idea of what they think they want after they finish school, being mindful that most of their experience is happening on the clinic floor at the school, which is one type of environment, but it doesn't really fully mirror what it's like to be in a particular type of salon. So they would be so excited as a result of that, because then they would have a sense of, this is the type of salon that I want. Some would want that very sanitized, very pristine, all white salon. And some would want the more kind of hippy dippy, laid back, let's burn some sage kind of place. And some would want something that's in between that, it just depended.
So I want to go back one more thing, and then I'm respectful of your time. You've been very generous today. And what we do want to make sure is that either you or Michelle from our team puts in the chat how to get a hold of you.
Sure.
And certainly look you up on LinkedIn, which should be Janet Williams. So we can get some of that information out there. But here's really a question. I want to go back to this very successful owner that was part of your system and who had very little turnover. And she asked a question. I want to make sure I understood the question. So it was, what do you want? But you were a little more specific than that. Go through that question one more time. It was not only what you want, but it was the specifics around that.
Yeah. So it was what do you need, right?
Okay.
What do you want, and what would you like to see happen from a financial standpoint? But then name something specific that's above and beyond.
That's it.
What you need as a baseline, right? Because people can say, well, I need to make X amount per week to meet my basic expenses. And she was always looking and asking for people to reach a little higher than that. Let's go above and beyond what your baseline expenses are and talk about what you would like to see happen for yourself outside of that, whether it's something for your kid. The holidays are right around the corner, whether it's something for you, maybe you need to go on vacation, you haven't been in years. I mean, whatever that thing is, let's set you up and set your goals so that you can hit that milestone, rather than just focusing on that day to day.
That was the nugget for me. And what I didn't write down when you were talking, because I was listening carefully what you're saying, I didn't write it down. So it's, I think Michelle just typed in the chat. And by the way, use the chat if anybody has any final questions for Janet here, and give her a shout out. She's an amazing guest. I love learning from Janet. I love name some specific, great word there, and above and beyond, great question. Always asking to reach a little bit higher. That's awesome. All right, Patricia. Hi, Patricia. There's another reason that the 9 grid is so powerful, because it's personal and they can plan goals and expectations that are realistic for them. Absolutely, Patricia. Thank you for that. The 9 grid is a tool that does allow some of the heavy lifting to go with questions like this and to create that kind of interaction. So Patricia, great call out. Thank you for that. Janet, you have been so gracious with your time today. Do you have any final words for our group of salon leaders today?
What I would say is that, it's a process, and to give yourself some time and some grace around this, but that the most important action that you probably can take starting today is to start planning for what you would like to see in your business that's different than what you're seeing today. What is it that you want to feel and want to see and want your teams to experience, and how does that translate to your guests? And plan that, look at what that is, reach a little bit higher in regard to what is that thing? What do I want the total experience to feel and look like? And then start working with your team together to design a plan that helps you to get there, recognizing that that won't happen overnight, that it's going to take a little bit of strategic action, a little bit of planning, and a lot of commitment to get there, but that you certainly can.
All right.
If you're not there already.
I agree with Diane. This has been excellent. Let's all give Janet a virtual round of applause. Bravo, bravo. Give her a little shout out in the chat, Diane. Thank you, Diane, for your comment. Janet, here is the $1 Million Light Bulb. Welcome to becoming a member of the Brain Trust. This is not going to be the last time that we're going to spend time with you. You're getting some claps going there. So thank you, Janet. I appreciate your generosity and your point of view and your wisdom. And it's an honor to be part of the Unite as One think tank with you and several other industry leaders. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
All right, let's see what else I have for you today. I don't think I have anything else. We've got a great guest next week. And this person, I'm not going to say who it is. This person has an amazing body of work and an amazing set of contributions over the last, 20 or 25, 30 years, maybe. And he's got boundless energy. I'm not even going to say who it is. And it's a little bit weird for me because this guy also has recorded a series of interviews of industry leaders. So he's a master interviewer. And so I feel a little bit like Joe Schmo interviewing like Larry King or something like that, or pick who it is, or Oprah, I don't know. And so anyway, I'm excited about it next week. We are on next week. Then I think we have a couple weeks off. Yeah, so let's see what else. Remember, Become a Money School. I think a lot of what Janet's talking about can be solved with the right education. I really believe that. I believe education changes minds, it changes point of views, and it can change people's lives. One of my favorite quotes is by Will Rogers. No, not by Will Rogers. I think it was by Thoreau. And it was, many have dated the beginning of a new era with the reading of a book. Well, many have dated the beginning of a new era with a great idea, with the right type of education, with the right type of mentorship. So anyway, we hope you become a money school. You can go to qnityforschools.com to book a demo. We hope you had some light bulb moments today that connected some dots for you. Closing thoughts, knowing's not enough. We must apply. Being willing's not enough. We must do. And I think some of the things that Janet suggested in the talking about it, demonstrating it, leading it, and practicing it are very tangible things to that you can do. So thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next week. Shout out to Janet again, as well as our sponsors. Have a great rest of the day. Bye.